57,000 come home in flag-draped coffins. 150,000 return on stretchers. An estimated 500,000 have serious emotional problems. The majority, 2 million, return home unscarred by the war itself. But all are touched by the war's unpopularity. Their service and sacrifice goes largely unsaluted.
Society said, you didn't win your war, we won our wars. You know, you guys are losers. And they're not losers. When I go around, I tell them there's somebody.
And because I'm a loser, according to their standards, they want nothing to do with me. I think when I was wounded in Vietnam, my blood ran just as heavily, and my pain was just as heavily as my father's and other fathers of Vietnam veterans.
They got a guilt too, the people that sent us there. They know what they back was wrong. They know what they did was wrong. But we're the ones that are carrying the mark for them. A statement I make to my war is never going to be over for me. The war is never going to be over for any man that fought it. He's going to go to his grave with that war.
It is hardest for those closest to the combat. This is their history.
This society became hostile and in many ways alien to the Vietnam veteran. There was never really that homecoming.
Times Square, 1945. A celebration of victory in World War II. It is the reference point for the GIs who go to Vietnam. They have faith there is sufficient cause. After 2 world wars, then Korea, America's patriotism is unquestioned. Now, a new generation goes to war with the same sense of duty. Most go with a simple creed, a belief that when America calls, that call must be answered. The slogan was, "My country, right or wrong." Many came to describe it as a service to the American dream.
I bought an American dream. And because of possibly some of that upbringing, I still believe a little bit in that American dream. But I don't believe in it anymore in the way that it was taught to me. I question more now.
About 1 in 3 GIs sent to Vietnam see direct combat. 2 million rotate through as rear echelon troops. Another 6 million Vietnam-era veterans never saw these shores, serving at support bases throughout the world. Among the 500,000 who see combat, an unprecedented number are seriously wounded.
I got shot through the stomach. I stopped 8 bullets.
We got caught in an ambush. I was on a point with 2 of the machine gun crews, and I was the head machine gun crew, and I got a grenade in the back.
I was shot in the back, both legs, stabbed in the left arm through hand-to-hand combat. I was paralyzed in my right hand. I had shrapnel on my back, my feet, my head, and I had 40% of my body. My last wound was burned with napalm. And 2nd and 3rd degree burns. It was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Those seriously wounded survive in Vietnam because of advanced medical and transport techniques. Helicopter mobility saves them. Medical rescue teams are able to evacuate casualties in the midst of combat. A wounded officer who becomes an expert on battlefield medicine, Captain Max Cleland.
There was a development in terms of medevac by chopper, coupled with high technology available on the battlefield that saved guys like me that would have died in World War II or Korea.
The technology includes portable field hospitals. In major engagements, inflatable clinics and emergency wards are brought to the battlefield. The care is often better than the veteran will receive back home. Intricate surgery of every kind is available close to the combat zones. One man who is saved this way, Captain Cleland.
The survival rate in Vietnam was highest of any modern war. In World War II, the survival rate for getting wounded there was 71%. It was about 74% in Korea, but it was 82% in Vietnam. We suffered 10,000 guys who lost a limb. 10,000 amputees out of Vietnam. You had more arms, legs, and eyes lost in Vietnam than in World War I and Korea combined for American forces. So in Vietnam, you stood a better chance of being seriously disabled and surviving it than any previous war. On the emotional level, you stood a better chance of having doubts about the rationale of that sacrifice.
Captain David Christian won a dozen medals.
I had the last rites twice. I remember the priest giving me the last rites. I woke up and I was in a semi-state of shock. And I started screaming, you know, there can't be any justice. There's no God. Why me? You know, I'm only 19 years old. Father, please. I come back with hundreds and hundreds of crippled men whose bodies were wrecked in Vietnam, and we aren't perceived with dignity. I spent 2 years as an inpatient in hospitals. Then I spent 6 years as an outpatient. Came home, and my refuge was I was in the hospital. I felt comfortable in the hospital, filled with bodies that were wrecked from war. Guys missing eyes and legs and noses and their faces torn apart. I was comfortable among these people. They were my comrades.
The contrast in treatment back home angers them. A paraplegic Bobby Murdoch on the adjustment.
When I became a spinal cord injury, I started learning quick what you expect and what not to expect as far as care. You just got to learn to plan your life and start all over again. It takes a lot of patience, go through a lot of frustrations.
Among the 300,000 Americans wounded in Vietnam, 30,000 men come home totally disabled. It takes years of rehabilitation before they re-enter American life, often because the public cannot accept the reminders of an unpopular war. Another reason, some government hospitals are inadequate. Veteran Lou Corello recalls one.
They took me to the Bronx, and I swear to God, I thought I was going to prison. I mean, big, long hall, the ceilings were so high. This is an old building, you know. And I got in there, and I stayed there about 6 months. But the drugs in there, I mean, easier to get in there than they are in the street. And the rats and the roaches were there, you know. I had a friend of mine who was a total quadriplegic. He must have had a rat on him that must have weighed about 3 or 4 pounds on top of his chest, and he couldn't get it off. And 2 of his pairs jumped into the chair and knocked this thing off with a cane and killed it, you know.
Across the country, the veterans protest hospital conditions.
I got hurt in 105 Hollister. I got too close to the muzzle, and I have headaches, and I've been having headaches ever since then. I go in this hospital, they turn me down.
When I was in the hospital, I saw the doctors coming around, and they were putting guys out of the hospital with disabilities, severe disabilities, and telling them to go to another administration, go to the VA.
The Veterans Administration is a $22 billion a year agency. For years, the VA regards Vietnam's casualties as no different to other wars. In 1976, the VA gets a new director, Max Cleland.
I think what happened was that the country was not prepared. Not only the Veterans Administration was not prepared, or that the government wasn't prepared to deal with the casualties, but the country was not prepared to deal with high costs of the war, either financial or in personal terms.
Cleland himself is among the worst casualties. He lost both legs and his right arm in 1968 in a helicopter assault.
So I got out from under the chopper there. The chopper took off. I turned around and I saw a grenade there. Well, immediately I thought it was mine, and just before I touched it, it went off.
Cleland and others like him must overcome terrible physical wounds and still face another trauma, the reaction of loved ones. Family life becomes a casualty of the war.
My first thought was of my parents. I'm an only child. How would my parents react to their only child getting virtually blown away? My immediate question was, were they going to love me? Were they going to accept me or not? How am I going to explain this whole thing to my friends? I mean, my boyhood chums that I played basketball with and baseball with and swam and and ran around the neighborhood. I mean, what am I going to say? You know, that you went to Vietnam and got all screwed up? I thought about it, and yet I didn't realize how deeply other people are affected by somebody seriously disabled. They're deeply affected. My father had a great guilt complex. My mother instinctively, the first few years, reacted in an overprotective manner. My friends were immediately affected. One guy, when he heard the news, went out and threw up. One lady actually avoided me for years because she couldn't face me. You're going to have this kind of emotional overload on friends and family. But I think it was even made worse by the reaction of the country toward Vietnam.
We handed out 29,000 boys from my county alone went and fought in Vietnam. That's a hell of a lot. My 2 brothers served over there. My one brother spent 4 years there. Today, the 3 of us are disabled from the service. The trauma of war is no different. So therefore, the respect and dignity should be the same. I was only 17 when I went in. I couldn't explain the magnitude of Vietnam at that time. And at 20 years of age, I knew how to fight a war, but I didn't know the reasons why or why not.
Some veterans cannot forget what the war did to Vietnam. At boot camp, they attack a mock Vietnamese village. Marine Jack McCloskey.
It was taught to us of saying you go into this ville and you have to blow everything away in this ville. And you begin to do that because your basic mistrust of the Vietnamese people is already ingrained in you. Anything with slant eyes, anything that was a gook was a gook. They were not human beings.
And we were always told, as long as you don't make human contact with them with the hands, you will always see them as the enemy. But once you touch him, you're going to find out he's got flesh and blood like you do.
Marine Lou Corello lost both legs in Vietnam. But like many others, he is also traumatized by the nature of the war, by what it did to his mind.
I was part of a team that killed civilians. Civilians who were in key spots. I was like a hired gun, you know. I still can't sleep without a light on. All the people maybe that I either put away or helped put away are going to get me.
One of the nightmares I still have about it is having my medic bag by me and reaching down, reaching for a battle dressing, and that battle dressing turns into a body bag. And I still can't get over that.